Welcome to another episode of Monica Mentors. You already know I'm your host, author Monica Martin Fletcher, and I am so excited to come to you again to just have conversation. Don't want this show to ever be too deep. Don't want you to feel like the conversation is unrelatable. But I do want you to listen. I do want you to share it. And I do want you to give me your feedback. Guys, that is me. When you see me commenting on the comments that you make, I promise you that is me, not AI. Just food for thought for those who continue to post. I appreciate you. Um, so I wanted to, as you guys know, we always talk about my role as a mentor. And we have talked about a lot of different conversations that have shaped us and shaped this particular platform that I have on Evan Vision to be able to talk to our kids, talk to parents of teens, and talk to even, I'm going to say parents, grandparents, all of the extended family is the word that I like to use. And so for these next couple of shows, you guys are actually going to see me talking to individual groups within the family dynamic. I often say when I'm talking to my friends, the only way you can heal is you have to start in each part of the ancestral line. And so for today's show, I'm going to take a shift to the parents and or the grandparents that I have normally spoke to before. A lot of this was motivation for me because as I watch you guys come into your wealth, your riches, you thousandaires, I also, when I'm watching things online and I'm reading different conversations and I'm listening to different people, a lot of you guys are in a position where now that you have your quote unquote, what people like to say, newfound money, you're starting to see this behavior from your kids that's not quite making sense. And so today I want to do some mentoring to those parents who find yourself in what I like to call this episode the lift off lab. We're going to talk about what happens when you launch into your next level. So here we go, guys. You've become successful. You've proved, I've made it, whatever platform you use. But now you cannot figure out what's going on with this child. They are misbehaving. They're shutting down. They're turning to TikTok and their friends instead of turning to you. And you're asking yourself, where did I go wrong? Because these are some things you weren't quite seeing before you got the riches and before you got the wealth on the different platforms. But let me tell you something. You didn't do anything wrong. You just need to shift from discipline to divine intention. And so that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I have created the Lift Off Lab. This is going to be a series. We're going to break this down. There are going to be a lot of tips and tools that I'm going to encourage you to use. And more importantly, I'm going to give some of you guys, some of you parents, I want you to do this for the next 30 days. I don't know if you guys have heard, I've often heard that whatever you do for 21 days, it typically becomes a habit. And so I want you to take the Liftoff Lab and the mentoring that we're going to talk about, put it into practice. It's not just about parenting, ladies and gentlemen. It is about my responsibility to mentor you with purpose so that you can mentor your kids. Remember, we're looking to heal the generation. We're looking to continue our ancestral bloodline going so that we don't have to keep dealing with the same things over and over again. So, on this episode, we're going to talk about leading your child with love, with wisdom, and definitely spiritual clarity. Now, this is where we're going to try to take a little truth to purpose. Some of us may have to grow intentionally in some areas that perhaps our money may not be able to buy for us. I know there are some spaces where, as we get into wealth, and I'm talking about physical money, Sometimes we tend to seek babysitters. Sometimes we get nannies. Sometimes we get a lot of people to try to help to groom our children simply because we may just not have time to do it. I need to give you some tough love, mom and dad. There should never be anyone that your child should respect and honor in the parental space more than they do you. You need to figure out a way sometimes if they need to travel with you, even if you have to, give the nanny, let them understand that there is some parental space that must be created in order for you to have true intentionality in raising your child now that you're in the space where you have more than enough to do with both you and your family, probably in some cases have always wanted to have. And so the biggest thing is you cannot lose you can't disconnect from your own children. And I pause because I feel like somebody needs to kind of take that in a little bit. And so let's just be transparent. Our kids today are growing up in a world where social media is louder than mama's voice. It's louder than daddy's wisdom. It's louder than the prayers that maybe your mother and your father prayed and whispered, even over your children when they were first born. Now, see, I'm talking to the parents because when you first had those kids, you may not have had the wealth that you have now. You may have been in a little bit more of a tougher space. And even if you did have the wealth when the children were born, you probably still had individuals in the family who were whispering prayers over those children. Of course, every parent, I hope, wants nothing but the best for their children when they come out of the womb. And so when you're in a space where money is louder than the prayers and the influencers are louder, the algorithms are louder, the anonymous groups, the chat groups are louder than the voices or those prayers that were prayed, then sometimes you have to step in with more love. You have to step in with more of a strategy. You have to step in with more spiritual intention. You cannot lose your children to the noise or to the money. Because listen, most of the time they're not just scrolling, they're searching. And guess what that thing sometimes they are searching for? Their pure identity. So they may be looking for validation. They may be looking for someone to simply tell them who they are. And if they're not careful, they'll find an answer in a comment section before they're hearing it from their own parents. Misbehavior isn't always about rebellion. Oftentimes, research shows that it's about confusion, it's about pressure, or a simple cry for connection that the kids desire with their parents, even if you can buy them the world. I was looking at something, guys, the other day, and this gentleman, he was talking and he said he never really thought about what having money, how it triggered a lot of the things that he wanted his kids not to deal with because he wanted to, in his mind, he wanted them to have everything that he didn't have growing up. And yet he finds himself, even with money, he's like a multimillionaire. Even with money, he's still seeing the same issues and the same problems that maybe families see who don't have access to those same things and are things he may have saw his parents deal with because, as I said, he was first generation money. And so you have to understand that your kids carry the weight of the world as well. Even though you can buy them the world, they sometimes feel that the world is too fast for them to catch up to it. Think about those one percenters who have children. The one, we typically say 1% and 2% of the individuals have wealth. But what do their children look like? Do they look like they have healthy relationships with their parents? Two names just popped in my head. I'm like, if I were in that space, Um, it just doesn't look like they have a wealthy, excuse me, they have a wealthy relationship, but it doesn't look like a healthy relationship with their parents. And I'll kind of leave it at that. It often seems sometimes when you are in a financial place, sometimes your kid may disregard what you say. And it's not because they don't love you, it's just that maybe you haven't created a space for them to understand why you worked as hard as you did to give them what you needed them to have. Maybe they saw you in the boardroom, or if you are, in the court systems, if you were a judge or a lawyer or an attorney, prosecutor, they saw you working more because you had to work cases. And so they may not truly have understood the value in your work so that they wouldn't have to work as hard as they do. I think I mentioned on a previous show, I heard this comedian, saying he was telling his sons, you don't have to work as hard. I mean, I have money for your children, your children's children, and so forth. But the child still was just like, but I need you now. Like, I don't, that didn't seem to be relevant to them. So this is definitely a space that I'm learning through conversations that mentoring for wealthy individuals is just important as mentoring someone who feels like if I get money, this is where I'll be. Because we all, at the end of the day, are in a space where even though money divides us, the love and the value that we have for family, that should never change. And so you don't want to feel unsafe with your children in the space of learning how to grow them up in the way they should go. And that's why I feel mentorship is so important to you. In one of our most powerful episodes on the platform, there was a show that I did called The Secret Power of Childlike Belief. And in that episode, we talked about how imagination and faith are the foundation of growth. And your child still has that spark to love you no matter how old they get. But they still need to feel like you're going to protect them and not punish them for every decision that they make that seems to be contrary to what either you're teaching them or any other support systems, i.e., nannies and butlers and different things like that that you've put in place to help with the kids. They still need you, mom and dad, to be a part of that particular growth system. They need you to speak to their potential and not just their problems. I interviewed a couple of people in this category confidentially, and one of the things that I heard, and even some of the articles that I was reading and some of the research that I was doing, is that a lot of times the ones who are in that top 1 to 2% as far as wealth, their perception is parents tend to teach them more about the business and keeping the family legacy going financially than actually caring about their everyday decisions, i.e., where do we go to school? Where do you want to go to college? Do you want to learn how to be a part of the swim team? Do you want to be a part of the basketball, the football, the lacrosse? It tends to be more focused on what can we do financially versus what can we do to make you feel valued as a child. Another thing that I read in that same particular group when I was doing my research, the money is endless, but the love seems to be short. So a lot of times these kids feel like, the parents are like, okay, well, I pay for you to go to this trip to Europe. I pay for you and your friends to do this. You have this house to do that. You have the cars, take them where you want to go. And the parents you were equating that to love, but your children were tending to equate it as if that was a way to keep them from bothering you. Third thing that I saw was a lot of the kids in this particular demographic of first generation wealth or long-term wealth throughout the family seem to have more of an attachment to babysitters and nannies and butlers because they were there. They were present at the most pivotal times that child was needing it, especially like in those teen years, maybe even the elementary level as well. And so in our episode again, because what we're mentoring on today is we want you to understand that you have to speak to their potential without regards to just harping on what the problem is as you see it, which in a lot of times I go back to the same thing. A lot of your kids feel like it's money for you and nothing else. Now, in the episode Roots and Wings, we explored how children need both grounding and freedom. You can't hold them down and just use that as a rule. You have to lift them up within so they can see vision. Now, that, mom and dad, is what you call mentorship and not just trying to only create financial, monetary legacy. And then in another episode, we talked about that was titled Understanding Sexual Urges. We got real about the emotional and spiritual confusion that comes with them growing up. Go back and look at that episode and allow yourself to be mentored because it reminded us that our kids are not just bodies, but they're actual souls. And if we don't guide them in grace, the world can easily misguide them with sexual shame. So, parents, what do you do now? Well, listen, you got to step out of the boardroom for a minute. You got to come off the corporate plane. You've got to even come out of your big governmental positions. You got to come out of the pulpit. You got to get to a space where you have to understand in this season, you have to go from parenting to mentoring. And what I mean by that is you got to stop preaching about the problem and you got to start partnering with your children. You got to stop reaching and you got to start revealing. We become the safe space that our children crave. They don't just only want the judgment, and Lord knows they don't want to be fearful, but then a lot of them are creating this space where they are unintentionally becoming fearless. And so mentoring means asking, hey, what's really going on with you? What's going on? Tell me about your heart. Instead of saying to them, okay, so you're going to act up today. This is what we're doing today. It means saying, mom and dad, I see you. Before you say to them, listen, if you don't change this behavior right now, I'm going to take away this. I'm going to take away your phone. I'm going to take away your car. You're not going on that trip. And so it means also sometimes you may have to pray before you punish. Prayer is not deep. The old folks used to say, Lord, my grandmother, funny thing, she used to always say when my cousin was acting up, y'all, she would always say, Lord, help me with this girl. And I'm not putting my cousin on blast, so I'm not saying her name. But that's a prayer. And then some of you guys are going to have to listen before you lecture. But don't listen to their heart before you lecture them about the next financial decision. And most importantly, you have to love without conditions. Mom and dad, I know again, when you're in these spaces where they are left with, third party, whether it be a family member, I know a lot of influential artists do that. They will leave the children with a family member, and the family member seems to be the all in all to your child. But you still have to figure out a way to navigate that space again. So you won't feel some kind of way, the family member won't feel some kind of way, and the child won't feel stuck in the middle trying to find that balance. Because when you mentor with spiritual intention, you don't just correct behavior, you cultivate identity. I had to let that sink in for a second. Remember what I said? Because when you mentor your young people, your children, your nieces and nephews, their cousins, when you mentor with spiritual intention, you don't just correct behavior, you cultivate identity. You're not just raising children. That's where you can start being mindful that you're raising a leader and not just a leader in the boardroom. You're raising a leader in the community. You're raising a leader in their family. And therefore, you're raising someone who will be the best of themselves as they take your company, your corporation, your business legacy, your music legacy to the next level. Y'all know I say this all the time, but those who may just be joining my mentoring platform, I always say Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way they should go. And when he or she is old, he or she will not depart from it. So don't assume, this is my other pet peeve, don't assume your child knows what you never took time to teach them. That is probably one of my favorite new quotes. Don't assume your child knows what you never took the time to teach. The Bible will say Selah. I'm going to ask you to be silent for just a second and let that kick in. Assumptions don't truly educate, and exposure is not instruction. And so, what I mean by that is don't wait until your child finds themselves in a situation, i.e., they were skipping school and you didn't know, and so they got expelled, or they got detention because they were wearing something to school that they were not supposed to wear, but you were not around, so you didn't get a chance to capture it, or you assumed that they knew what they were supposed to wear to school. You never take the time to not expose your children. Assumption is what got a lot of us in a whole lot of trouble. I know it did me a lot, y'all. So why does mentorship with my child even matters? This is where I want to come in and help you. So I'm going to roll out again for the next 30 days. We're going to call it the Liftoff Lab for parents. And so we've talked about shifting parenting to mentoring. Let me introduce this to you as something I've created. It's been on my mind for a while. I just didn't really know how to put it in words. But this isn't about fixing your child. Okay? Your child's not a lab project, y'all. It's about transforming your relationship with them. It's about helping you show up and identify when they need you there the most. And a lot of this is going to really start with your children once they get around 12 years old, because that's when you'll really start seeing a lot of them starting to act out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to transform them in a way that is not just you being a provider, but as a spiritual guide, a mentor, and you are becoming a safe space for them. The Liftoff Lab is a 30-day guided experience designed to help you reconnect with your children. We're going to rebuild trust, and we're going to restore your voice in their life. Because let's be honest, mom and dad, when your child starts tuning you out, I know you'll start to feel like you're being powerless. But you are not powerless. You're just missing a strategy. And this lab is going to give you that strategy. It's built around 4 weekly themes that walk you through the process of mentoring your children with intention. And so here's the 4 episodes we're going to cover during this 30 days. Episode 1, we're going to talk about listening without lecturing. I'm going to teach you how to hear your child's heart and not just their behavior. I'll even give you some practice questions that'll open doors instead of shutting them down. Episode number 2, we're going to talk about building trust through transparency. You're going to learn how to share your own story with your children, your wins, your wounds, your wisdom. Because when kids can see your humanity, they can trust your guidance. Episode number 3, we're going to talk about influence over authority. You're going to learn how to shift from control to connection. You're going to learn how to guide your kids' choices without forcing them, and how to lead with love and not with fear. That's going to be a tough one for a lot of you guys. Episode 4, We're going to talk about legacy conversations. I'm going to help you learn how to speak life into your children's future and not just only their financial future. I'm going to plant seeds of purpose, even if your children are quite not ready to harvest them. Throughout this journey, I want you to get a journal. You can even label it the liftoff journal. And I want you to document your wins. I want you to reflect on your growth. But more importantly, I want you to stay accountable and committed to this process. Because, ladies and gentlemen, this is not just about emotional work, it's about sacred work. This is your moment to reclaim your influence beyond the dollar, to reconnect with your child, to let me help you mentor them with grace and not with guilt, and to launch your relationship with your child no matter what level they're in: elementary, middle school, high school, and even college. And some of your adult parents can learn some things as well. This is not just about your children. This is not even just about you as a parent, but this is about building a legacy. And so, what we're going to do is, I want you to set up your journal. On the next episode, I'm going to give you some challenge questions. I want you to notice some things about your child's behavior during the day. Did you even ask them something as simple as, how was their day? Did you invite them into a conversation, or did you just give them a command? What scriptures or affirmations do you feel will be necessary to use during this process? I want you to think about, what did you teach your child today instead of assuming that they automatically knew? I want you to think about, what did you learn during this process? And I even want you to think about, did you validate your child's feelings as we walk this 30-day journey together? And then, more importantly, when we get to the end of this process, I want you to think about, what are some small wins that you experienced as a parent? Y'all, listen, before we close out this episode, parenting today is not just about managing behavior, but it's about shaping legacy. Whether you have $1 in the bank or $1 trillion in the bank, the Liftoff Lab is your invitation to mentor with intention. I want you to nurture your child's heart and show them purpose in the generation that's so hungry for guidance. But y'all, they are drowning deep with influence. Deuteronomy 6 and 6 through 7 reminds us, these commandments that I give you today are to be put in your heart. Impress them in your children. Talk to them. Sit at home. Get them off of the computer. You pay the bills. Pull them away from the nannies. Pull them away from all the babysitters. All, especially like some of you parents, artists, when you're touring and you guys are doing homeschool programs, you've got to get your kids involved in this process. Now, that's real parental and spiritual leadership, and that's how you develop it for everyday life. So, here is my challenge to you. Are you ready to put mentorship in motion? If you're ready to reconnect, if you're ready to rebuild trust with your children and raise them to go to the next level, I want you to stay tuned, stay focused, stay intentional, and join me for the next 30 days as we lift off. Because guess what, mom and dad? Lift off actually with your children starts with you. All right, guys, I will see you on episode 1. Make sure you have your pens, your notepads, your phones. I need you guys to be intentional as we walk through these special episodes on Monica Mentors. I will see you guys next time. Be blessed.